We live. Shraddha, you can start your story.
What happens in the final impossible seconds before death? Does the mind truly experience a lifetime? Today, we are going to experience a dramatic story that asks just that question. Prepare to have your reality entirely reset. Hello, everyone, and huge welcome to our Quill Assembly's YouTube session. I'm Shraddha Kedia, and I'm thrilled to share one of the most brilliant and devastating short stories in American literature. An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce. Bierce was a Civil War veteran, which shaped his famously cynical and uncompromising writing. He earned the nickname Bitter Bierce. This story, published in 1890, is a chilling masterpiece of psychological realism and time distortion. It is a meditation on what the human mind does when faced with an absolute end. The story is in three parts. Pay close attention when we transition from part 1 to part 2, and especially when we reach part 3. Your perception of time will be intentionally manipulated. Find a comfortable place and let's begin. Part 1. A man stood up upon a railroad bridge in northern Alabama, looking down into the swift water 20 feet below. The man's hands were behind his back, the wrists bound with a cord. A rope closely encircled his neck. It was attached to a stout cross timber above his head, and the slack fell to the level of his knees. Some loose boards laid upon the sleepers supporting the metals of the railway supplied a footing for him. Two private soldiers of the Federal Army, directed by a sergeant who, in a civil life, may have been a deputy sheriff. At a short remove upon the same temporary platform was an officer in the uniform of his rank, armed. He was a captain. A sentinel at each end of the bridge stood with his rifle in the position known as support, that is to say, vertical in front of left shoulder, the hammer resting on the forearm thrown straight across her chest, a formal and unnatural position, enforcing an erect carriage of the body. It did not appear to be duty of these two men to know what was occurring at the center of the bridge. They merely blockaded the two ends of the foot planking that traversed it. Beyond one of the sentinels, nobody was in sight. The railroad ran straight away into a forest for 100 yards, then curving was lost to view. Doubtless, there was an outpost farther along. The other bank of the stream was open ground, a gentle acclivity topped with a stockade of vertical tree trunks, loophole for rifles, with a single embrasure through which protruded the muzzle of a brass cannon commanding the bridge. Midway of the slope, between the bridge and the fort, were the spectators, a single company of infantry in line at parade rest. The butts of the rifle on the ground, the barrels inclining slightly backwards against the right shoulder, the hands crossed upon the stock. A lieutenant stood at the right of the line, the point of his sword upon the ground, his left hand resting upon his right, excepting the group of four at the center of the bridge. Not a man moved. The company faced the bridge, staring stonily, motionless. The sentinels facing the bank of the stream might have been statues to adorn the bridge. The captain stood with folding arms, silent, observing the work of his subordinates, but making no sign. Death is a dignitary who, when he comes announced, is to be received with formal manifestations of respect, even by those familiar with him. In the code of military etiquettes, silence and fixity are form of deference. The man who was engaged in being hanged was apparently about 35 years of age. He was a civilian, if one might judge from his habit, which was that of a planter. His features were good: a straight nose, firm mouth, broad forehead, from which his long dark hairs was combed straight back, falling behind his ears to the collar of his well fitting frock coat. He wore a mustache and pointed beard. but no whiskers. His eyes were large and dark grey, and had a kindly expression which one would hardly have expected in whose neck was in hemp. Evidently, this was no vulgar assassin. The liberal military code makes provision for hanging any kind of persons, and gentlemen are not excluded. The preparations being complete, the two private soldiers stepped aside and each drew away the plank upon which he had been standing. The sergeant turned to the captain, saluted, and placed himself immediately behind that officer, who in turn moved apart one pace. These movements left the condemned man and the sergeant standing on the two ends of the same plank, which spanned three of the crossed ties of the bridge. The end upon which the civilians stood almost, but not quite, reached a fourth. This plank had been held in a place by the weight of the captain. It was now held by that of sergeant. At a signal from the former, the latter would step aside. The plank would tilt, and the condemned man go down between two ties. The arrangement condemned itself to his judgment as simple and effective. His face had not been covered nor his eyes bandaged. He looked a moment at his unsteadfast footing, then let his gaze wander to the swirling water of the stream racing madly beneath his feet. A piece of dancing driftwood caught his attention, and his eyes followed it down to the current. How slowly it appeared to move! What a sluggish stream! He closed his eyes in order to fix his last thoughts upon his wife and children. The water touched to gold by the early sun. The brooding mist under the banks at the same distance down the stream, the fort, the soldiers, the piece of drift, all had distracted him. And now he became conscious of a new disturbance. Striking through the thought of his dear ones was a sound which he could neither ignore nor understand. A sharp, distinct metallic percussion, like the stroke of blacksmith's hammer upon an anvil. It had the same ringing quality. He wondered what it was, and whether immeasurably distant or nearby. It seemed both. Its recurrence was regular, but as slow as the tolling of a death knell. He awaited each stroke with impatience, and he knew not why apprehension. The intervals of silence grew progressively longer. The delays became maddening. With their greater infrequency, the sounds increased in strength and sharpness. They hurt his ear like the thrust of a knife. He feared he would strike. What he heard was the ticking of his watch. He unclosed his eyes and saw again the water below him. If I could free my hands, he thought, I might throw off the noose and the stream and the spring into the stream. By diving, I could evade the bullets and swimming vigorously reach the banks, take to the woods, and get away home. My home, thank God, is as yet outside their lines. My wife and little ones are still beyond the invaders' farthest advance. As these thoughts, which have here to be set down in words, were flashed into doomed man's brain rather than involved from its captain, nodded to the sergeant. The sergeant stepped aside. Part 2. Peyton Farquhar was a well-to-do planter of an old and highly respected Alabama family. Being a slave owner, and like other slave owners, a politician, he was naturally an original secessionist and ardently devoted to the Southern cause. Circumstances of an imperious nature, which it is unnecessary to relate here, had prevented him from taking service with the gallant army that had fought with the disastrous campaigns ending with the fall of Corinth. And he chafed under the inglorious restraint, longing for the release of his energies, the largest life of the soldier, the opportunity for distinction. That opportunity, he felt, would come as it comes to all in wartime. Meanwhile, he did what he could. No service was too humble for him to perform in aid of the South, no adventure too perilous for him to undertake, if consistent with the character of a civilian who has a heart of a soldier. and who, in good faith and without too much qualification, assented to at least a part of frankly villainous dictum that all is fair in love and war. One evening, while Farquhar and his wife were sitting on a rustic bench near the entrance to his grounds, a grey clad soldier rode up to the gate and asked for a drink of water. Mrs. Farquhar was only too happy to serve him with her own hands. While she was fetching the water, her husband approached the dusty horseman and inquired eagerly for the news of the front. The Yanks are repairing the railroads, said the man, and are getting ready for another advance. They have reached the Owl Creek Bridge, put it in order, and built a stockade on the northern bank. The commandant had issued an order, which is posted everywhere, declaring that any civilian caught interfering with the railroad, its bridges, tunnels, or trains will be summarily hanged. I saw the order. How far is it to the Old Creek Bridge? Farquhar asked. About 30 miles. Is there no force on this side of creek? Only a picket post half a mile out on the railroad and a single sentinel at its end of the bridge. Suppose a man, a civilian and a student of hanging, should elude the pocket post and perhaps get the better of the sentinel, said Farquhar, smiling. What could he accomplish? The soldier reflected. I was there a month ago, he replied. I observed that the flood of last winter had lodged a great quantity of driftwood against the wooden pier at this end of the bridge. It is now dry and would burn like tow. The lady had now brought the water, which the soldier drank. He thanked her ceremoniously, bowed to her husband, and rode away. An hour later, after nightfall, he repassed the plantation, going northward in the direction from which he had come. He was a Federal scout. Part 3. As Peyton Farquhar fell straight downwards through the bridge, he lost consciousness and was as one already dead. From his state he was awakened, ages later. It seemed to him by the sharp pain pressure upon his throat, followed by a sense of suffocation. Keen, poignant agony seemed to shoot from his neck downwards through every fibre of his body and limbs. These pains appeared to flash along well defined lines of ramification and to beat with an unconceivably rapid periodicity. They seemed like streams of pulsating fire heating him to an intolerable temperature. As to his head, he was conscious of nothing but a feeling of fullness, of congestion. These sensations were unaccompanied by thought. The intellectual part of his nature was already effaced. He had power only to feel, and feeling was torment. He was conscious of motion in, encompassed in a luminous cloud of which he was now merely the fiery heart. Without material substance, he swung through unthinkable arcs of oscillation like a vast pendulum. Then, all at once, with terrible suddenness, the light about him shot upwards with the noise of a loud splash. A frightful roaring was in his ears, and all was cold and dark. The power of thought was restored. He knew that the rope had broken. He had fallen into the stream. There was no additional strangulation. The noose about his neck was already suffocating him and kept the water from his lungs. To die of hanging at the bottom of a river? The idea seemed to him ridiculous. He opened his eyes in the darkness and saw above him a gleam of light. But how distant, how inaccessible. He was still sinking, for the light became fainter and fainter until it was a mere glimmer. Then it began to grow and brighten, and he knew that he was rising towards the surface, knew it with reluctance, for he was now very comfortable. To be hanged and drowned, he thought, that is not so bad, but I don't wish to be shot. No, I'll not be shot. That's not fair. He was not conscious of an effort, but a sharp pain in his wrist appraised him that he was trying to free his hands. He gave the struggle his attention, as an idler might observe the feat of a juggler without interest in the outcome. What splendid effort! What magnificent, what superhuman strength! That was a fine endeavor. Bravo! The cord fell away. His arms parted and floated upwards, the hands dimly seen on each side in the glowing light. He watched them with a new interest, as first one and then the other pounced upon the noose at his neck. They tore it away and thrust it fiercely aside, the undulations resembling those of a water snake. Put it back, put it back. He thought he shouted these words to his hands, for the undoing of the noose and had been succeeded by the dirtiest pang that he had yet experienced. His neck ached horribly. His brain was on fire. His heart, which had been fluttering faintly, gave a great leap, trying to force itself at his mouth. His whole body was racked and wrenched with an insupportable anguish. But his disobedient hands gave no heed to the command. They beat the water vigorously with quick downward strokes, forcing him to surface. He felt his head emerge. His eyes were blinded by sunlight. His chest expanded, and with a supreme and crowning agony, his lungs engulfed a great draught of air, which instantly he expelled in a shriek. He saw now in full possession of his physical senses. They were indeed preternaturally keen and alert. Something in the awful disturbance of his organic system had so exalted and refined that they made record of things never perceived. He felt the ripples upon his face and heard their separate sounds as they struck. He looked at the forest on the banks of the stream, saw the individual trees, the leaves, the winding of each leaf, saw very insects upon them, the locusts, the brilliant bodied flies, the grey spiders stretching their webs from twig to twig. He noted the primestic colors in all the dewdrops upon the million blades of the grass, the humming of the gnats that danced above the eddies of the stream, the beating of the dragonfly wings, the strokes of the water spider's leg, the oars which had lifted their boat. All these made audible music. A fish slid along beneath his eye, and he heard the rush of its body parting the waters. He had come to the surface, facing downwards the stream. In a moment, the visible wall seemed wheelie slowly round himself the pivotal point, and he saw the bridge, the fort, the soldiers upon the bridge, the captain, the sergeant, the two privates, his executioners. They were in the silhouette against the blue sky. They shouted, pointing at him. The captain had drawn his pistol but did not fire. The others were unarmed. Their movements were horrible, their forms gigantic. Suddenly, he heard a sharp report, and something struck the water smartly within a few inches of his head, spattering his face with spray. He heard a second report, and saw one of the sentinels with his rifle at his shoulder, a light cloud of blue smoke rising from the muzzle. The man in the water saw the eye of the man on the bridge, gazing into his own through the sights of the rifle. He observed that it was a grey eye, and remembered having read that grey eyes were keenest, and that all the famous marksmen had them. Nevertheless, this one had missed. A countess wall had caught Fracure and turned him half around. He was again looking into the forest on the banks opposite the fort. The sound of a clear, high voice in a monotonous sing song now rang out behind and came across the water with a distinction that pierced and subdued all other sounds, even the beating and the ripples of in his ears. Although no soldier, he had frequented camps enough to know the dread significance of that deliberate drawling, aspired chant, and the lieutenant on the shore was taking a part in the morning's work. How coldly and pitilessly, with what an even calm presaging and enforcing tranquillity in the man. With that accurately measured intervals fell those cruel words. Attention, company, shoulder arms, ready. Aim, fire. Ficure dived as deeply as he could. The water roared in his ears like the voice of Niagara. Yet he heard the dull thunder of the volley, and rising again towards the surface, he met shiny bits of metal, singularly flattened, oscillating slowly downwards. Some of them touched him on the face and hands, then fell away, continuing their descent. One lodged between his collar and neck. It was uncomfortably warm, and he snatched it out. He rose to the surface, gasping for breath. He saw that he had been a long time underwater. He was perceptibly farther downstream, nearer to the safety. The soldiers had almost finished reloading. The metal armors flashed all at once in the sunshine as they were drawn from barrels, turned in the air, and thrust into their sockets. The two sentinels fired again, independently and ineffectually. The hunted man saw all this over his shoulder. He was now swimming vigorously with the current. His brain was as energetic as his arms and legs. He thought with the rapidity of lightning. The officer, he reasoned, will not make that error a second time. It is as easy to dodge a volley as a single shot. He had probably already given the command to fire at will. God help me, I cannot dodge them all. An appalling splash within 2 yards of him was followed by a loud rushing sound which seemed to travel back through the air to the fort and died in an explosion which stirred the very river to its deeps. A rising sheet of water curved over him, fell down upon him, blinded him, strangled him. The cannon had taken a hand in the game. As he shook his head free from the commotion of the smitten water, he heard the deflected shot humming through the airhead, and in an instant it was crackling and smashing the branches in the forest beyond. They will not do that again, he thought. The next time they will use a charge of grape. I must keep my eye upon the gun. The smoke will appraise me. The report arrives too late. It lags behind the missiles. That is a good gun. Suddenly, he felt himself whirled round and round, spinning like a top. The water, the banks, the forest, the now distant bridge, fort, and men, all were blurred. Objects were represented by their colors only. Circular horizontal streaks of colors, that was all he saw. He had been caught in a vortex and was being whirled on with a velocity of advance and gyration that made him giddy and sick. In a few moments he was flung upon the gravel at the same foot of the left bank of the stream, the southern bank, and behind a projecting point which concealed him from his enemies. The sudden arrest of his motion, the abrasion of one of his hands on the gravel, restored him, and he wept with delight. He dug his fingers into the sand, threw it over himself in handfuls, and audibly blessed. It looked like diamonds, rubies, emeralds. He could think of nothing beautiful which it did not resemble. The trees upon the banks were garden plants. He noted a definite order in their arrangement, inhaled the fragrance of their blooms. A strange roseate light shone through the spaces among their trunks, and the wind made in their branches the music of alien harps. He had no wish to perfect his escape, was content to remain in that enchanting spot until retaken. A whiz and rattle of grape shot among the branches high above his head roused him from his dream. The baffled cancer had fired him a random farewell. He sprang to his feet, rushed upon the sloping bank, and plunged into the forest. All that day he travelled, laying his course by the rounding sun. The forest seemed interminable. Now, nowhere did he discover a break in it, not even a woodman's road. He had not known that he lived in so wild region. There was something uncanny in the revelation. By nightfall, he was fatigued, footsore, and famishing. The thought of his wife and children urged him on. At last, he found a road, which led him in what he knew to be the right direction. It was as wide and straight as a city street, yet it seemed untraveled. No fields bordered it, no dwelling anywhere. Not so much as the barking of a dog suggested human habitation. The black bodies of the trees formed a straight wall on both sides, terminating on the horizon in a point like a diagram in a lesson in perspective. Overhead, as he looked up through the rift in the wood, shone great garden stars looking unfamiliar and grouped in strange constellations. He was sure that they were arranged in some order which had secret significance. The wood on either side was full of singular noises, among which once, twice, and again he distinctly heard whispers in an unknown tongue. His neck was in pain, and lifting his hand to it, found it horribly swollen. He knew that it had a circle of back where the rope had bruised it. His eyes left congested. He could no longer close them. His tongue was swollen with thirst. He relieved its fever by thrusting it forward from between his teeth into the cold air. How softly the turf had carpeted the untravelled avenue. He could no longer feel the roadway beneath his feet. Doubtless, despite his suffering, he had fallen asleep while walking, for now he sees another scene. Perhaps he has merely recovered from a delirium. He stands at the gate of his own home. All is as he left, and all bright and beautiful in the morning sunshine. He must have travelled the entire night. As he pushes open the gate and passes up the wide white walk, he sees a flutter of female garments. His wife, looking fresh and cool and sweet, steps down from the veranda to meet him. At the bottom of the steps, she stands waiting with a smile of ineffable joy, an attitude of matchless grace and dignity. Ah, how beautiful she is! He springs forward with extended arms. As he is about to clasp her, he feels a stinging blow upon the back of the neck. A blinding white light blazes all about him with a sound like a shock of a cannon. Then all is darkness and silence. Peyton Farquhar was dead. His body, with the broken neck, swung gently from one side to side beneath the timbers of the Owl Creek Bridge. Thank you.
What a end, yaar. What a end. It's amazing. It was so amazing to listen it. What an end. First, I was thinking
It
कि
was
क्या
from the
end?
entire escape.
Illusion, all illusion, na?
Right, right.
The way
And
he,
in fact, this whole story was thought in seconds. Like the whole narration is about the end time of his death. So
hmm,
the whole narration, which took us about 30 minutes, was the last 7 seconds, or which we think that the 7 seconds which we see are the ones which he thought of his family and children, wife.
what an, in fact, the
आइंस्टाइन की याद आ गई
huh? क्या
आइंस्टाइन की याद आ गई रिलेटिविटी ऑफ टाइम
तरुण सर आपका क्या कहना है स्टोरी पे
First of all, bravo. It's a big task actually to recite all the story in one line, in one take.
next
So
is yours
bravo.
turn ना
I'm not dexterous like you, श्रद्धा. आज श्रद्धा ने बोला था.
हाँ
हाँ,
श्रद्धा ने
बहुत
बोला
बढ़िया.
सर
श्रद्धा, you're miraculous. बहुत बढ़िया
Thank
लगा.
you so much.
Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up.
सर ये मेरे दो
Thank you so
और
much,
बच्चे
sir.
हैं श्रद्धा एंड अनुष्का ये भी हम लोग सब साथ में थोड़ा 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 काम करते रहते हैं
You're doing very well, ma'am. प्रीति शारदा जी, you're doing very well. ये सब मोती हैं, आप उन मोतियों की माला बना लेती है.
सर ये अच्छा लेट्स कम बैक टू द स्टोरी तुम्हें पता है श्रद्धा ये ऑथर खुद भी गायब हो गए थे 1913 में ये मॉस्को में he went away and nobody found him पता है ये बात तुम्हें मेक्सिको में he was like
नहीं, ma'am.
ये
He
मैक्सिको के
had a
फॉरेस्ट में
mysterious and ironic ending, just like his stories.
हाँ this is and he was
Right,
actually a
right.
civil
Veteran he
he
was.
fought civil war
Civil
or
veteran, yes.
he was punished and he has written many of such kind of stories.
And
The,
in one of those wars only, he had a very bad head injury that became his inspiration of writing this type of gloomy and this sad fiction rather than the glorious romantic one.
they were very straight like hit एकदम hit करती हैं इसके fiction and ending इसका तो बहुत ही ल्यूनाइज था मतलब कैसे मतलब एकदम डेथ अपनी डेथ से पहले ये सोचना अमेजिंग
Actually, ma'am, and ma'am, हम
Ma'am,
लोगों ने
this is the
काफी
theory. You speak, Shraddha. I will speak
नहीं
later.
नहीं like we
It's
have
okay.
listened a lot कि we get just 7 seconds या कुछ
हाँ,
limited time
exactly.
होता है
That's what
हमारे
I was
पास
saying.
Theory.
तो उस पॉइंट पे वो सब कुछ सोचना और जबकि वो सच भी नहीं था तो वो काफी बड़ी बात है
ये कितना डिटेल में वो हर चीज बता रहा था और बताते बताते एकदम खत्म
It's like कि मैम जो एक्स मिलिट्री मैन है ना उस वो विटनेस कर चुका है उतना वायलेंस उतनी ब्रुटैलिटी सो ही कैन एक्चुअली एक्सप्रेस दैट ऑल इन वर्ड्स मतलब एक्सप्रेसिंग इज आल्सो मतलब नॉट इजी ना मैंने एक लिखा था एक एक्सप्रेसिंग समथिंग वाला कुछ एक लाइन थी तो वो
बताएं
मेरे को इससे याद आती है
बत बोलो प्लीज बताओ
You know,
कुछ बोलो आप
yes,
मेरी वो लाइन ओशन समथिंग थी एक मिनट में बताती हूँ आपको मैंने लिख रखी है वो
please continue.
सही टाइम पे नहीं मिलती मुझे
आप कुछ बोलें श्रद्धा मैं तो श्रद्धा का
this
थोड़ा
is ma'am this is that which one is more tragic tragedy of having oceans to speak but could only express by drops or tragedy of expressing oceans but never a single soul willing to be wet in it
सो डीप
So deep, exactly my word.
एग्जैक्ट मतलब इतना कुछ मतलब हिंदी में कुछ कहें तो बोलने के लिए बहुत कुछ और सुनने वाला कोई नहीं
क्या है सच्ची त्रासदी मतलब अगर इसका ट्रांसलेशन कर दिया जाए कि त्रासदी क्या है
Once
कहने
again,
को
please,
समुंदर होना
on
और
request.
कहना सुन न पाना
Once again, please, once.
yes
okay
please
this
once
is
again
with
Anushika
which
please
one
repeat
is more
yourself
tragic Which one is more tragic? Tragedy of having oceans to speak but could only express by drops, or tragedy of expressing oceans but never a single soul willing to be wet in it.
सही में दिस इज एक्चुअली अ ट्रेजेडी है ना तरुण सर ने
Well
हमें
said.
दोबारा बुलवाया और मुझे लगता है फिर उनका नेटवर्क का प्रॉब्लम है
नहीं नेटवर्क नहीं है
हाँ हाँ
I was taking my dinner simultaneously. Well, I'm touched. You're very intelligent.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me join in your squad, intellectual squad.
इट इज एक्चुअली
बहुत बढ़िया. Yeah. और सुनाएं please. I'm on listening mode.
may
यस यस प्लीज
I would
प्लीज
like to go back to Shraddha and ask her that she was the one reading the story so you know while you read आपने इससे पहले भी एक बार इसको पढ़ के देखा होगा एंड फिर आपने इसको अभी दोबारा पढ़ा
व्हाई
what were
डिड यू
your thoughts while you were experiencing
so
while
basically
getting through it for the first time
yeah
like
so the
Basically,
first
I will
time when I
start
was
with
reading
why did you choose this story, and then why did you choose this story, and why did you finalize this story? पहले तो 3-4 चॉइसेस रही होंगी तुम्हारे पास उसके बाद इस स्टोरी को क्यों चुना और सुन के कैसा लगा पढ़ के कैसा
सो
लगा?
ऑनेस्टली मैम, जब मैं स्टोरी चूज कर रही थी तो मुझे काफी ऑप्शंस मिले, एंड बहुत हैप्पी हैप्पी से ऑप्शंस थे वो, कि हैप्पी एंडिंग एंडिंग हो रही है सब में, और कुछ मतलब ऐसा सा ही था। एंड बेसिकली जो मैं जॉनर रीड करती हूँ वो होप के ऊपर है, सेल्फ हेल्प के ऊपर है, वो चीजें काफी मुझे पर्सनली टच करती है। तो व्हेन आई केम अक्रॉस दिस एज एन ऑप्शन एंड आई वाज लाइक कि ये अच्छा है, हम इसे रखते हैं, बट आई विल कंसिडर मोर ऑप्शंस, कि कहीं ये ज्यादा हैवी टॉपिक ना हो जाए या कुछ ऐसे। सो व्हेन आई सॉ मोर ऑप्शंस, तो मेरा वापस से वही इसी स्टोरी पे सर्कल बैक हो रहा था कि नहीं, यही पढ़ना चाहिए। एंड व्हेन आई रेड इट माई सेल्फ फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम, पहले तो मैंने इसका जिस्ट ही देखा था, बट जब मैंने इसे फर्स्ट टाइम पढ़ा तो शुरू में पार्ट 2 तक मैं ऐसे थी कि हाँ, इसने स्केप कर लिया है, अब ये घर जाएगा, इसकी भी एंडिंग थोड़ी अच्छी हो रही है। एंड फिर जब वो वाइफ वाला पॉइंट आता है कि वो अपने वाइफ से मिलता है और वो स्टेयर्स पे खड़ी होती है, तो मैं ऐसे थी कि नाइस, अच्छी हैप्पी एंडिंग हुई है, ही डिजर्व्स इट। एंड द वेरी एंडिंग जब वो होता है कि ही इज हैंग हो गया ये एंड हिज बॉडी इज डाउन, तो आई वाज लाइक कि this is shattering. I did not expect it. And it also took me to a point of thinking that what we think is real, like क्या वो एक्चुअल में रियल है, और हमारे पास वो मोमेंट्स होने चाहिए अपने लाइफ में जब हम उन चीज़ों को रिकॉल कर सके, कुछ अच्छी मेमोरीज, कुछ अच्छे मोमेंट्स, कुछ अच्छे लोग, कुछ ऐसी चीज़ें होनी चाहिए जिन पे हम ज़्यादा अपने आप को डवेल करें, रादर देन थिंकिंग कि ये नहीं हो पाया, वो कर सकते थे, वो चीज़।
You're very right. अनुष्का,
श्रद्धा
आप
ने तो एक्सटेंशियल क्राइसिस में डाल दिया।
एक्चुअली मैं एंडिंग सोच रही हूँ, मतलब कितना हम कहते हैं ना कि हमारी एक्सपेक्ट मतलब इल्यूजन्स में हम कहाँ तक पहुंच सकते हैं, मतलब इसकी तो हाइट थी इल्यूजन की, मतलब कहाँ ये
माइंड
अपनी
हैज
वाइफ
नो
है ना, एंड जीरो पे आ गया, माइनस पे चला गया एक्चुअली, तो जीरो भी नहीं, मतलब इतनी इससे ज्यादा इल्यूजन मैंने नहीं देखा कभी इस वजह से, मतलब
ह्यूमन माइंड इज वंडरफुल मैम, इट
ये हम
कैन थिंक
हमेशा कहते हैं
अबाउट।
कि अच्छा सोचो अच्छा होएगा, तो इसके साथ तो अच्छा सोचने से कुछ नहीं हुआ, मतलब रियलिटी
तो
कुछ
अच्छा
और थी,
सोचना
जो
बंद करो,
illusion में हुआ।
अच्छा सोचना बंद करो।
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है, अच्छा सोचेंगे तो अच्छे इंसान बनेंगे ना, है ना, इसलिए। आप कुछ सुनाना चाहेंगे तरुण सर?
या
मैं सुन के बड़ा खुश हो रहा हूँ। Human mind is wonderful. Human body and this small cosmos is wonderful. This is the small body, the small cosmos, and so harmonic, so perplexive. Um, it is wonderful, really. And moreover, the way you express and you're discussing, it is quite impressive. Keep on doing, keep on sharing whatever you have, because expression is important. We are not here to impress anybody, but to express.
सर ये हमारे सारे
आप
फाइनल ईयर के स्टूडेंट्स हैं अभी, और ये सब लोग इस साल कॉलेज से डिपार्ट हो जाएंगे, लेकिन इनसे हम इसी तरह से जुड़े रहेंगे, किसी न किसी तरह से इनको मंच पे बुलाते रहेंगे और उनके साथ जुड़े रहेंगे, तो इनसे
वंडरफुल।
इनके एक्सप्रेशंस देखते रहेंगे हम।
बहुत बढ़िया। मोर
तो
ओवर मैं एक बात शेयर करता हूँ तुम लोगों से। मैं ट्रेनिंग में था, तो ट्रेनिंग में हमारे साथ एक मॉर्गन अख्तर दास नाम के व्यक्ति थे। ही वॉज वेरी काइंड पर्सन। तो उन्होंने जब ट्रेनिंग दिया तो किसी ने उसमें क्रिटिसाइज किया गंदे तरीके से। तो उन्होंने स्टेज पे आके एक बात बोली कि आलोचकों के नाम पे कभी मेले नहीं भरते। आप जो आलोचना करता है ना, ये नहीं अच्छा, वो नहीं अच्छा, इसमें ये बुराई, इसमें वो बुराई, उनको कोई याद नहीं रखता। जो आपको शाबाशी देता है, बेटा वेरी गुड, लाइक प्रीति शारदा मैडम, इनको तो आपकी आंख का आंसू जो है इनके लिए स्टेट अवार्ड बन जाएगा।
क्या बात है सर, ये इन्हीं इन्हीं सितारों की वजह से हम चल पा रहे हैं, ये साथ नहीं देते तो शायद
बहुत
हम कुछ नहीं कर पाते।
बहुत ज्यादा प्यारी बात कह रही सर। मतलब समझ थोड़ी 1 सेकंड बाद आई, बट जब समझ आई तो समझ आया, थोड़ी ज्यादा प्यारी बात।
मैं
इसने
तुम लोगों को एज अ सीनियर, एज अ टीचर एक बात जरूर बोलूंगा कि अपनी पढ़ाई के साथ साथ अपने संस्कार बहुत बड़े रखना, किरदार बहुत बड़ा रखना। फिर डरने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है किसी से। एकदम ऐसे जियो जैसे बस धरती अपने बाप की है। डरने की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ इंडिया में ये मसला है कि जो बहुत लंबा टाइम जो है फीमेल को वैसे मौके नहीं मिले जो 2025 में मिल रहे हैं। तो आप इन मौकों का भरपूर फायदा उठाएं, बड़ी बड़ी पोस्टों पे जाएं और अपने पैरों पे खड़े हो जाएं। मेरी शुभकामनाएं हैं आप लोगों को। और मैं बेनती करूंगा, रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा मानसी जी से अपनी कोई पोइट्री भी सुनाए प्लीज।
हाँ मैं
इफ
भी यही
इफ
कहने लगी
इफ
थी, मानसी, we will end up with your lines. We'll end up with your lines because it's like more than 40 minutes
आज
we are live.
कुछ अलग होगा,
हम्म,
आज मानसी इंग्लिश में सुनाएगी,
अरे वाह क्या बात है।
क्योंकि मतलब जो एक फ्लो बना हुआ है, जैसे श्रद्धा जी ने अभी अंग्रेजी में अपनी कहानी सुनाई, तो एक फ्लो वो बना के रखा है। तो इट वाज ये एक्चुअली ये इसका जो मुझे वो मिला था ना, क्या कहते हैं, इंस्पिरेशन मैम सर, ये मुझे हमारे एक फ्राइडे फेबल्स की, हमारी स्टेल्स एंड टी की स्टोरी से ही मिला था, जो हमने वाइल यू वर इन कॉलेज हमने एक दिन पढ़ी थी, द फ्लावर दैट नेवर रीच्ड यू।
हाँ
तो मुझे इसका जो क्या कहते हैं यही जो टाइटल है ये इतना अच्छा लगा कि मैंने इस टाइटल को इंस्पिरेशन बना के एक पूरी पोएम लिखी। तो सुनिएगा, द फ्लावर दैट नेवर रीच्ड यू, words that never were said, the melancholy that never ended, the yearning that always stayed. My life is nothing but a pile of ifs and buts. Why? Because I just never had the guts to ask for what was mine, guts to fight for what I loved so much, guts to scream when I had had enough. But none of this came out. But none of this came out. It stayed locked inside. Sometimes because of helplessness, sometimes pride. The pride that can never be sad. The pride of not being an attention seeker. The helplessness of getting weaker and weaker. I'm not making sense, my body falling apart. I'm not fine, but fine enough to fulfill my promises nevertheless. And what about me? Couldn't care less.
amazing.
That.
That was something new for me.
I actually shared it with you. You never read it.
मतलब मैंने तुम्हें
एक
सुना है, लेकिन इंग्लिश में कम सुना है, हिंदी में ज्यादा सुना है तुमसे। और तुम ऑन स्टेज इंग्लिश बोलोगी, वो बड़ी बात थी, क्योंकि तुम्हारे दिल को छूती हिंदी की पोएट्री है।
आपकी हिंदी इंग्लिश में भी ना मानसी हिंदी का फ्लो था, एंड इट इज गुड। मैं 1 मिनट ले लूं प्रीति शारदा जी? हाँ, बस ज्यादा टाइम नहीं लूंगा। एक ना सुखविंदर अमृत करके एक शायरा है, मेरी महबूब शायरा है, मैं उन्हें बहुत प्यार करता हूँ, उनकी शायरी मेरी जान है। तो आपकी पोइट्री के आसपास उनकी एक शेर है, तो अगर आप इरशाद कहें तो मैं आपको सुनाऊं।
इरशाद
सर।
तो 2 बच्चों ने नहीं कहा, इट मींस वो सुनना नहीं चाहते।
नहीं इरशाद सर, इरशाद।
अरे वाह,
इरशाद
ओके।
सर।
ये आप लोगों के लिए है, ये आपका ही सब कुछ है, मैं आपको दे रहा हूँ, क्योंकि मैं आपसे कभी मिला नहीं, पता नहीं आपकी शादियों पे आके आपको शगन दे पाऊं या नहीं दे पाऊं। अभी आपको ये शेर दे रहा हूँ, साथ ले जाना, साथ लेके रखना बस। क्यों डर डर के जीवना छड़, बगावत कर, ਤੇ ਟੱਕਰ ਲੈ ਕਿਉਂ ਡਰ ਡਰ ਕੇ ਜਿਉਣਾ ਛੱਡ ਬਗਾਵਤ ਕਰ ਤੇ ਟੱਕਰ ਲੈ ਤੇਰੇ ਹਿੱਸੇ ਦੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਤੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਦਾ ਰਾਜ ਕਿਉਂ ਹੋਵੇ ਕੋਈ ਰਿਸ਼ਮ ਆਖੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਰਿਸ਼ਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਚੰਦਰਮਾ ਕੀ ਚਾंदनी ਕੋਈ ਰਿਸ਼ਮ ਆਖੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਲਾਓ ਆਖੇ ਕਿ ਅਗਨੀ ਜੁਗਨੂਆਂ ਦੇ ਬਿਆਨ ਦੀ ਮੁਹਤਾਜ ਕਿਉਂ ਹੋਵੇ कि अग्नि जुगनुआ दे बयान दी मोहताज क्यों
वाह।
होगी
क्या बात है सर।
ये आपके लिए है सब बच्चों के लिए
So
That's it.
Shraddha, thank you so much for today's session, and Tarun sir will be waiting for your session. It's your turn. Next story next Friday 6 o'clock.
मैं तो या पंजाबी में या हिंदी में बोलूंगा
जिसमें मर्जी बोलिए सर, ये मन चाटता होगा।
so sweet thank you so
So
much आप
see
ख्याल
you.
रखना ना
Take care everyone. Thank you, and we are going offline.
Thank you, Shraddha.